Michael had always loved the calm that settled over Willow Creek by evening. The soft rustle of leaves, the distant hum of cars passing by, and the occasional bark of a dog were the soundtrack to his peaceful suburban life. It was the kind of neighborhood where doors stayed unlocked. Kids played outside until the streetlights flickered on, and neighbors greeted each other with genuine smiles. That night, as the sun dipped below the horizon and a gentle breeze cooled the air, Michael sat on his porch, sipping his favorite herbal tea and enjoying the calm. His golden retriever, Buddy, rested lazily at his feet, occasionally lifting his head to watch a squirrel dart across the yard. Everything was as it always was: quiet, comfortable, familiar. Then came the unexpected knock on the door. Michael wasn't expecting anyone. When he opened it, he found a neatly folded letter from the HOA waiting on his welcome mat. Curious, he picked it up and unfolded the paper, his brow furrowing as he read the words. A polite but firm note about a noise concern attributed to his property. His first reaction was surprise. Noise from his house. He hadn't played music loudly or hosted any gatherings. Nothing out of the ordinary had happened in his yard or indoors. The note expressed concern about sounds that were disturbing neighbors late into the evening. It wasn't accusatory, but it was clear that someone had reached out, hoping the situation would improve. Michael's mind raced. Was it possible that a nearby house had been louder than usual, and somehow his home got the blame? He glanced across the street, where Margaret lived. She was a long-time neighbor and older woman, with a reputation for being meticulous and, some would say, a bit particular. She kept her garden pristine and her home spotless. Michael knew she took her role as a neighbor seriously, often acting as an informal guardian of the neighborhood's calm. He remembered hearing laughter and music drifting from Margaret's house just a few nights ago. It had sounded like a celebration, children's voices mixing with upbeat tunes. But he had assumed it was just a family gathering and hadn't thought much of it. Now, reading the note, he wondered if that was the source of the disturbance and if somehow the concern had been misplaced. Feeling a mix of frustration and curiosity, Michael decided to visit Margaret the next day. Maybe a direct conversation could clear things up. He wanted to understand the situation better before it escalated. When he arrived, Margaret was tending to her flower beds, the afternoon sun casting a warm glow on the brightly colored blooms. She looked up and gave a polite nod. "Hello, Margaret," Michael began gently. "I received a note from the HOA about a noise concern linked to my property. I wanted to check in with you since you've lived here so long. Did you hear anything from my place?" Margaret paused, wiping her hands on her gardening gloves. Her eyes flickered briefly, and then she said, "Oh, Michael, it's not you, exactly. It's just, well, it's been quite loud in the evenings. I'm worried the neighborhood is losing its quiet charm." Michael nodded slowly. "I understand. I think the noise might actually be coming from your grandson's birthday party last week. I could hear the music and laughter from across the street." Margaret hesitated. "Yes, that was a celebration. I suppose it was louder than I expected, but I didn't want to cause trouble. The HOA letter must have been a mistake." Michael smiled kindly. "No trouble at all. I just want to make sure we all understand what's happening, so no one feels uncomfortable or blamed unfairly." She smiled back, a bit relieved. "Thank you, Michael. I appreciate you coming over to talk." As Michael walked back home, he thought about how misunderstandings could easily grow in a place like Willow Creek if neighbors didn't communicate openly. The night's peace had been interrupted, but perhaps this small moment of honesty could help restore it. Little did he know, this was just the beginning of a story that would bring neighbors closer together, teaching them the value of patience, understanding, and the occasional need to listen beyond the noise. The morning after his conversation with Margaret, Michael felt a mix of relief and lingering curiosity. He had hoped the gentle exchange would clear the air, but the neighborhood buzzed with a quiet energy that was hard to ignore as he stepped outside to retrieve the newspaper. He noticed Mrs. Kim from 2 houses down chatting with a group of neighbors near the mailbox. Their voices were low, but carried a note of intrigue as they glanced toward Margaret's house. "Did you hear? Sounds like Margaret's grandson threw quite the party last weekend," Mrs. Kim said, folding her arms. "Heard music until past sunset." Michael smiled softly, stepping forward. "I heard that too," he said. "But somehow, the HOA sent a note about noise to my house. I'm not sure how that happened." The group turned toward him, some with raised eyebrows, others nodding in sympathy. "Well, these things happen," Mrs. Kim said. "People hear noise and guess the source without always checking." Michael nodded. "I spoke to Margaret yesterday. She mentioned the party and admitted it might have been louder than expected, but she also seemed concerned about upsetting the neighborhood." One of the neighbors, Mr. Alvarez, a middle-aged man with a warm smile, added, "Margaret means well. She just worries about the neighborhood's peace. But maybe this is a chance for all of us to talk more openly." As the conversation continued, a few other neighbors joined in, sharing their own experiences with the party's noise. Some had found it a lively break from routine, while others had wished it ended earlier. Michael listened carefully. It was clear the evening had been more eventful than usual, but the feelings it stirred were mixed, not simply annoyance or frustration, but a desire for clarity and connection. Later that day, Michael walked his dog past Margaret's home. He noticed some neighbors lingering on their porches, casting curious glances. He understood when something stirred in a quiet place. It naturally drew attention. Margaret appeared on her front steps, arranging a small potted plant. She saw Michael approaching and waved. "Michael," she called softly. "I hope I didn't cause too much fuss with that complaint." "It was never my intention." Michael smiled warmly. "No fuss, Margaret. I think this is a good opportunity for neighbors to talk more, maybe share expectations before things get confusing." Margaret nodded thoughtfully. "You're right. Sometimes I forget how important it is to keep the lines open. Maybe we could suggest a small gathering. Something informal to help everyone stay connected." Michael's eyes brightened. "That sounds like a great idea. It might even help with future misunderstandings." As the afternoon sun dipped lower, the neighborhood began to feel a subtle shift. The whispered conversations around mailboxes and on porches weren't fueled by frustration, but by a quiet curiosity, shared hope for understanding. Back at home, Michael sat down at his computer to send an email to the HOA board. He outlined the situation calmly, mentioning the party and the mistaken noise concern. He also suggested that the neighborhood might benefit from a casual meeting where residents could get to know each other better and discuss shared expectations about gatherings and quiet hours. He hit send, feeling a sense of calm determination. If the neighborhood could turn this moment into one of connection, it would be stronger for it. That evening, laughter and soft music once again drifted through the air, but this time, it came from a small group gathered at the park nearby. Families shared food, children played, and neighbors chatted under the setting sun. Margaret watched from her porch, a gentle smile on her face. Michael caught her eye and gave a small wave. She waved back. The quiet peace of Willow Creek was returning, but with something new, too. A sense of community built not on rules or complaints, but on kindness, honesty, and the willingness to listen. A few days after Michael sent his email to the HOA board, he received a formal invitation to attend the next HOA meeting. The note was polite and straightforward, thanking him for his willingness to discuss the recent noise concerns and encouraging him to share any thoughts during the meeting. Michael felt a mix of anticipation and a little nervousness. He wasn't used to being at the center of neighborhood discussions, but he understood the importance of clearing up any confusion. He hoped this would be a chance to help neighbors better understand what had happened and move forward positively. On the evening of the meeting, Michael arrived at the community center. The room was familiar long tables set up with nameplates, a whiteboard at the front, and a small group of residents already gathered, chatting quietly. Margaret was there too, sitting near the front, her posture composed, but her expression serious. As the meeting began, the HOA president, Mr. Thompson, welcomed everyone and outlined the agenda. When it came time to discuss the noise concern, the atmosphere shifted. Eyes turned toward Michael, who stood up politely. "I appreciate the opportunity to speak," he began. "I wanted to clarify the situation regarding the recent noise concerns attributed to my property." He explained how he had not hosted any gatherings during that time and shared his conversation with Margaret about her grandson's party. He spoke calmly, focusing on facts and understanding rather than blame. Margaret listened quietly. When it was her turn to speak, she expressed her worries about maintaining the peaceful environment of the neighborhood. She admitted the party had been lively and acknowledged that the noise might have been more noticeable than she had expected. Some neighbors nodded in agreement, while others looked thoughtful. A few expressed appreciation for Michael's openness and Margaret's honesty. However, not everyone was convinced. A couple of residents questioned how such misunderstandings could be prevented in the future. One neighbor raised concerns about setting clearer expectations for noise and celebrations. Michael responded thoughtfully, suggesting that better communication between neighbors before events could help. He proposed that the HOA consider hosting informal gatherings where residents could share ideas and build stronger connections. Margaret added, "I agree. Sometimes we all need reminders that we're part of a living, breathing neighborhood, one that includes celebrations and moments of joy as well as quiet." The conversation grew more positive as residents shared their thoughts. Ideas were exchanged about creating simple guidelines focused on respect and understanding rather than strict rules. Several people mentioned how important it was to approach concerns with kindness and open hearts. By the end of the meeting, the tone had shifted from tension to collaboration. The HOA board agreed to explore ways to encourage better neighborly communication and to consider organizing casual social events in the coming months. As the meeting wrapped up, Michael felt a sense of relief. What had started as an unexpected and uncomfortable situation was turning into an opportunity for growth and connection. Margaret approached him as the room emptied. "Thank you for handling this with such grace, Michael. I know I was quick to worry, but I appreciate your willingness to listen." Michael smiled warmly. "Thank you, Margaret. I think we're all learning how to make this neighborhood even better." As they parted ways, Michael reflected on how a single misunderstanding had sparked a conversation that might bring their neighbors closer than ever before. It wasn't just about noise, it was about respect, trust, and the simple human need to feel heard. Walking home, Michael felt hopeful. Willow Creek had its challenges like any neighborhood, but with people willing to talk and listen, those challenges could become opportunities after the HOA meeting. Michael felt determined to ensure that the situation would not spiral into unnecessary tension. The noise concern, although now understood to be from Margaret's grandson's party, still lingered in some minds. Michael knew that the best way to clear any remaining doubts was to gather clear, factual evidence. He decided to review his home security camera footage from the night in question. Michael was no stranger to technology and had set up cameras around his property a while back for general safety. The cameras recorded video, but no audio, so he couldn't use them to prove noise levels. Still, the footage would show who was present and where any activity occurred. Sitting at his desk, Michael clicked through the video files. Around 7 o'clock that evening, the footage showed a calm, quiet yard. No signs of any guests or unusual activity at his home. As the night went on, the footage remained peaceful. A few neighbors walked by, but there were no signs of a party or loud music coming from his property. He then focused on the house across the street, Margaret's place. While he couldn't see inside from his camera angle, he noted increased activity around her driveway and front yard. A group of people arrived with balloons and gifts, which matched the timeline Margaret had mentioned for her grandson's celebration, to be sure. Michael decided to speak with a few neighbors directly. He wanted to understand their perspective and gather their observations. His first visit was to the couple next door, the Andersons, who often waved hello during morning walks. "Hi, Mrs. Anderson," Michael greeted politely. "I'm trying to understand the noise situation from the other night. Did you notice anything unusual?" Mrs. Anderson smiled warmly. "Oh yes. There was quite the party next door, laughter, music, children playing. It was loud, but it sounded joyful. I didn't hear anything from your place, Michael." Her husband nodded in agreement. "We all heard the celebration at Margaret's, and it was clear the fun was over there. No disturbances from you." Encouraged, Michael thanked them and moved on to speak with the Millers, who lived a few houses down. "We noticed the party too," Mrs. Miller said. "The kids were excited, and there was some music. It was a bit louder than usual, but nothing out of control. We appreciated the heads-up from Margaret afterward." Michael appreciated the neighbors' honest feedback. Their observations matched what he had seen in the footage. The noise had come from Margaret's house, not his. With this information, Michael felt confident. He composed a clear and respectful email to the HOA board, attaching his summary of the security footage review and neighbor statements. He explained that while the celebration had been lively, the noise was not coming from his property. He also reiterated his interest in fostering good communication between neighbors to prevent future misunderstandings. Within a few days, the HOA acknowledged his message with thanks. They expressed appreciation for his transparency and willingness to work towards harmony in the neighborhood. Meanwhile, Michael continued his daily routine, grateful that the matter was settling. Yet, he also saw an opportunity, a chance for the neighborhood to grow closer. He reached out to Margaret again, suggesting they consider organizing a small neighborhood gathering, maybe a casual barbecue or picnic in the park. Something simple to bring neighbors together, where they could chat, laugh, and build connections without formality. Margaret was enthusiastic. "I think that's a wonderful idea, Michael. It's time we all had a chance to know each other better and celebrate the good things about our neighborhood." As the days passed, the mood in Willow Creek subtly shifted. Conversations at the mailbox were friendlier, smiles more frequent. The recent noise complaint was becoming less about inconvenience and more about an opportunity for kindness and understanding. Michael looked forward to the gathering, not just as a neighbor clearing his name, but as someone who wanted to be part of something positive and lasting. The day of the next HOA meeting arrived with a warm breeze and clear skies, promising a fresh start for Willow Creek's residents. Michael felt prepared and calm as he walked into the community center. He had gathered his thoughts, collected his evidence, was ready to share the full story with the board and neighbors. The meeting room buzzed with familiar faces, some eager, some curious. Margaret sat near the front, her expression composed yet thoughtful. Michael greeted her with a nod, appreciating the quiet understanding that had begun to develop between them. When the HOA president, Mr. Thompson, called the meeting to order, the discussion soon turned to the noise concerns that had been raised. Michael was invited to present his findings. Taking a deep breath, he began. "Thank you for the opportunity to speak again. I want to provide clarity on the recent noise concerns. I reviewed my home's security footage from that night and spoke with several neighbors who also observed the events. He explained that the footage showed no unusual activity at his property, and that multiple neighbors confirmed the celebration and noise came from Margaret's house. He emphasized that the party had been lively but respectful and acknowledged Margaret's willingness to take responsibility for the occasion as Michael spoke. Some faces in the room softened, nodding in understanding. But then, a voice from the back of the room interrupted. "I'm not sure this is the whole story," said Mr. Daniels, a longtime resident known for his sharp eye and no-nonsense attitude. "If there was a party over there, why didn't the complaint come from Margaret herself instead of the HOA sending it to Michael? Something doesn't add up." The room quieted and eyes turned to Margaret, who looked momentarily unsettled. Michael could sense the tension rising, but kept his voice steady. "I believe there was a misunderstanding," Michael replied. "Sometimes these situations can become confusing. My hope is that by sharing facts and being open, we can move forward positively." Margaret took a deep breath and stood up. "I want to say that I did call the HOA. It wasn't to blame Michael, but to express concern about the noise. I may not have been as clear as I should have been, and I'm sorry if it caused confusion or hurt feelings." Her words were sincere, and the room seemed to relax a bit. Mr. Daniels nodded thoughtfully. "Thank you for clarifying. That's important. That we communicate clearly in these situations. We all want a peaceful neighborhood, but we also need to support each other with kindness." Several other residents chimed in, sharing similar sentiments about the importance of clear, respectful communication. The conversation shifted from confrontation to collaboration. With ideas about how to better handle concerns in the future, Michael then suggested a practical step. Perhaps we could establish a simple process for neighbors to talk directly with each other before involving the HOA. Sometimes a friendly conversation can prevent misunderstandings. The board agreed, and the atmosphere grew warmer as everyone recognized the value of Michael's suggestion. Before the meeting ended, Margaret approached Michael. "Thank you for being patient and for handling this with such grace. I'm sorry for any trouble my call caused." Michael smiled. "No trouble at all. I think we both want the same thing, a neighborhood where everyone feels respected and heard." As people started to leave, the mood was lighter. The tension that had hung over recent weeks seemed to dissolve, replaced by a shared commitment to better communication and neighborly support. Walking home later, Michael felt a quiet satisfaction. What had started as a noise complaint had evolved into a moment of growth for the neighborhood. It reminded him that sometimes the best way forward is through understanding, honesty, and a willingness to listen. In the days following the HOA meeting, Michael felt a growing sense of optimism. The tense situation that had once threatened to divide the neighborhood was now turning into an opportunity to bring everyone together. Inspired by the positive responses during the meeting, he reached out to Margaret with a fresh idea. "Margaret," he said during their phone call, "what if we organize a small get-together, something simple, like a barbecue or a picnic at the park? A chance for neighbors to chat, relax, and maybe share some laughs." Margaret's voice brightened. "That sounds wonderful, Michael. I think it would help everyone feel more connected and maybe prevent future misunderstandings." Together, they drafted a plan and sent out friendly invitations to the neighborhood. The tone was warm and inclusive. No formal agenda. Just an afternoon for neighbors to come together and enjoy each other's company. Over the next few days, the invitations were delivered door to door. Some neighbors expressed excitement, others curiosity, but all seemed intrigued by the idea of a casual gathering. The buzz of anticipation quietly spread through Willow Creek. Michael and Margaret worked together to coordinate food, games for the kids, and a few simple decorations to create a welcoming atmosphere. They even arranged for a local musician to play soft acoustic tunes, hoping to add a pleasant background to the event. On the day of the gathering, the park was alive with activity. Families arrived carrying picnic baskets, folding chairs, and blankets. Children raced across the grass, chasing bubbles and playing tag. Neighbors greeted each other with smiles and hugs. old friendships renewed and new ones beginning to form. Michael noticed Margaret chatting happily with several residents. Her usual reserved demeanor softened by the easy laughter around her. He approached her with a smile. "This turned out better than I imagined," he said. "People seem genuinely happy to be here." Margaret nodded. "It's wonderful to see everyone relaxed and enjoying themselves. I'm glad we did this." As the afternoon sun cast long shadows, Michael found himself deep in conversation with the Andersons and the Millers. They talked about the neighborhood's history, favorite local spots, and hopes for the future. Near the picnic tables, a group of teenagers took turns on the guitar. While younger children gathered for a storytelling circle, the music blended, with the sound of chatter and laughter filling the park with a warm, inviting energy. Later, Michael noticed Margaret quietly speaking with Mr. Daniels, the neighbor who had voiced concerns at the meeting. They exchanged smiles, and Michael sensed that past disagreements were giving way to mutual respect. The gathering continued well into the evening, with neighbors lingering to watch the sunset. As people began to pack up, many expressed their gratitude for the event and eagerness to do it again. Walking home with Buddy trotting happily by his side, Michael felt a deep sense of contentment. What had started as a misunderstanding over noise had blossomed into something far more meaningful, a community coming together to support one another. He knew there would be challenges ahead, but the foundation of trust and communication they were building was a promising start. As the neighborhood lights flickered on, Michael glanced back toward the park, already imagining future gatherings filled with friendship, understanding, and the simple joy of being neighbors. In the weeks after the neighborhood gathering, Willow Creek seemed to hum with a new energy. Conversations flowed more easily, smiles were more frequent, and a sense of warmth spread among the residents. The walls that had once separated neighbors began to come down, replaced by bridges of trust and friendship. Michael noticed the change each morning during his walks with Buddy. People paused to say hello, exchanged news, and shared stories about their day. Even Mr. Daniels, who had been one of the most skeptical voices during the HOA meeting, greeted Michael with a nod and a small smile. One afternoon, Margaret invited Michael over for tea. The invitation was simple, but the gesture spoke volumes. As he stepped into her cozy living room, Michael appreciated how much the neighborhood's atmosphere had shifted. The tension from before was replaced by genuine camaraderie. "Thank you for everything you've done," Margaret said, pouring tea. "I realize now that sometimes fear of change or misunderstandings can make us act quickly. I'm glad we found a way to come together." Michael smiled. "It's all part of living in a neighborhood. We're learning to listen and understand each other better." Their conversation drifted to plans for future events and ways to keep the community engaged. Margaret suggested a book club, while Michael proposed a monthly newsletter to share stories and updates. As they talked, Michael felt grateful for the chance to build something positive. He realized that relationships, like neighborhoods, took effort, patience, and kindness. Outside, Buddy wagged his tail at the window, reminding Michael it was time to head home. Before leaving, Margaret handed him a small notebook. "I thought you might like to keep track of ideas or notes for the neighborhood, something to help us keep the momentum going." Michael accepted it warmly. "Thank you, Margaret. I'll make sure we use it well." Back at home, Michael began jotting down thoughts and plans in the notebook. He wrote about the importance of openness, the power of small acts of kindness, and the value of shared experiences. One evening, as the neighborhood settled into quiet routines, Michael found himself reflecting on the journey. From a single noise concern to a neighborhood gathering and newfound friendships. It was clear that communication and empathy had made all the difference. He felt a quiet pride in being part of Willow Creek, a place where people cared enough to listen, understand, and grow together. The upcoming weeks promised more opportunities to strengthen those bonds, and Michael looked forward to every one of them. Spring was in full bloom in Willow Creek, casting vibrant colors over the neighborhood and breathing new life into its streets. The once dense atmosphere that had surrounded Michael and Margaret's noise misunderstanding had long since faded, replaced by an encouraging sense of unity and goodwill. Michael stood on his porch one Saturday morning, watching neighbors arrive. For the monthly neighborhood brunch, a new tradition sparked by the success of their previous gathering. Tables were set with homemade dishes, and the sound of friendly chatter filled the air. Children played together nearby, and laughter floated on the breeze. Margaret approached with a tray of freshly baked cookies, her face lit up by the sunshine and the joy of the moment. "I can't believe how far we've come," she said, handing Michael a cookie. From a noisy party complaint to this our little community thriving. Michael smiled, taking a bite. "It's amazing what happens when people choose understanding over judgment. I'm grateful to be part of it." As neighbors mingled, Michael noticed Mr. Daniels chatting animatedly with a group of young families, sharing stories and advice. The man who had once been a skeptic had become an enthusiastic supporter of the neighborhood's new spirit. The HOA board had embraced the changes too. They introduced a monthly newsletter, highlighting community news, upcoming events, and heartfelt stories from residents. It was a way to keep everyone connected, informed, and inspired. Michael had taken on a volunteer role, helping organize events and serve as a liaison between the board and residents. He found satisfaction in the simple yet meaningful work of fostering connections. That afternoon, as the brunch wound down, Margaret and Michael stood together watching children chase bubbles and neighbors share smiles. "You know, Margaret said thoughtfully, this neighborhood feels different now. It's not just a place where people live. It's a place where people care." Michael nodded. "That's the best kind of neighborhood to be a part of." As the sun dipped toward the horizon, casting a warm golden glow, Michael felt a deep sense of peace. What had begun as a minor dispute had become the catalyst for something far greater, a community built on trust, respect, and friendship. Walking home, buddy trotting happily beside him, Michael reflected on the journey. He knew challenges would come again, as they always do. But now, he felt confident that Willow Creek was ready to face them together. The chapter of misunderstanding was closed, and a new chapter of connection had begun.